I am absolutely delighted to be joined by our guest today to discuss home language learning in international schools. And Jacob will be guest hosting this event. So yeah, very exciting. And yes, so just to sort of frame the discussion, so what we'll be looking at is the importance of developing and maintaining students' home languages, also known as mother languages, first languages, as part of their international schooling is becoming more widely recognized. So as well as being fundamental to the academic learning of multilingual students and their well-being, the promotion of home language learning also enriches our schools' linguistic ecosystems and contributes to the development of international mindedness, global citizenship, and intercultural understanding. In this panel discussion, we will explore these benefits, discuss the practicalities of how schools can design and implement home language programs, and consider how schools can create a shared understanding of the importance of home language development among all community members. So yeah, fantastic. Well, if we can just go through a few introductions. Kaori, you're at the top of my screen there. Do you want to do a quick 10-15 second introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kaori from Japan. I teach Japanese as a mother language or first language, as well as language acquisition in primary to through high school.
Fantastic. Great to have you on. Jacob, guest host as well. Do you want to just introduce yourself too?
Sure. Hello, I'm Jacob, and I'm an English language acquisition teacher at an international school in China. I'm also head of multilingual learning, and I'm also part-time doctoral researcher in multilingualism and interculturality in international schools. So that's my interests.
Brilliant. Martina?
Hi, I'm Martina. I research international mindedness in international schools, global citizenship education, and part of that is multilingualism and approach to English, host, and home languages in international schools.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martina. Susan?
Hi there. Hello from London, where I'm currently based. I've worked in international schools in the UK, but also in the Middle East and in Thailand. My most recent title was Head of Multilingualism, and I have a particular interest in family language policy.
Brilliant. And last but not least, Ahmed.
Hey, everyone. I'm Ahmed Al-Gindi. I'm from Egypt. I'm working as an Arabic teacher, as a first language or mother language, and also for the second language in James International School, Dubai. Yep.
Fantastic. Great to have everyone on this call. Right, I will hand over to Jacob to kickstart this discussion. And yeah, hope you all have a fantastic chat. Over to you, Jacob.
Okay, thank you. It's my great privilege to guest host this panel discussion about a topic of huge importance for all international schools. In our previous ISN panel discussion about multilingualism, we explored the necessity of linguistically inclusive and equitable approaches in our international schools. And part of this is the teaching of the languages of instruction, additional languages, and home languages. And that phrase home language brings us to the tricky point of terminology. Home language, mother tongue, native language, first language, identity language, heritage language, and so on. These are the various terms that are used to describe what we're talking about today. And each of these terms has different emphases and connotations, and each is imperfect. A particular term seems to solve some of the shortcomings with other terms, but then causes problems of its own. This highlights the complexity of languages and the diverse ways in which our languages connect with our identities and the various roles they play in our lives. So as we discuss this topic, we may use different terms like home language or mother language, but as we use them, we acknowledge their imperfections and we use them cautiously, knowing that no term can perfectly capture the complex language realities of our students. But this much is clear: the maintenance or development of the languages of a student's family, communities, and identities is a fundamental right. And it also has clear academic and well-being benefits, as we will discuss. This is becoming increasingly recognized by international schools, teachers, and curriculum organizations. But the question remains as to what practically we should do about it. what does good home language education look like in different international school contexts? How can we build systems and structures to promote it? What does it mean to teach it? What should schools do about it? And I'm looking forward to learning more about this from our panels as we explore both the why and the how of home language learning. So let's get started. The first question I thought we would discuss is about the benefits of teaching and learning. So what do you consider are some of the most important benefits of teaching and learning home languages in international schools?
I'll jump in if you like. I think on a practical level, many of our students, if they are globally mobile, might not know where they're going to be at the time when they approach their studies. So on a purely practical level, keeping all options open, making sure that our students have the possibility to study and work and socialize in as many languages as possible makes sense. And I would even say we have a responsibility as an international school community to do so. But I also think, on a more inclusive level, just on an emotional level, making sure that we welcome the whole student into our school, is the right thing to do and ticks a lot of the current DEIJ focus that many schools are talking about.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else want to pick up on any of those or introduce some other benefits?
Language is one of the most, if not the most, indicators of our students' identities. Our students are mobile students, as we said. They come from different places, and it's important twofold in two ways. Because first of all, we allow our students to be who they are. That leads to their positive self-identity. And the other thing, from the perspective of the school, it also helps the school to somehow counter the stigma the international schools have of, westernization, or whether if international school is really a Western school. Yes, so it is important to, as Susan said, acknowledge our students for who they are, and then allow them to develop develop themselves within their identities to that extent, of course, they want to.
Thank you. The point of, so you just the point about Westernization, and are you talking about how the linguistic diversity can give us another vision of what it means to be international? Is that what you're getting at there?
Of course, because international schools, operate predominantly in English. The teaching staff of international schools is predominantly English. Studies show that parents predominantly send their children to international schools, native or non-native parents, for the children to learn English. So we can see that it's quite heavy on English. Yet, if we call the school international, then we want to include the diversity. And international schools should really encourage and embrace all children that are in the school, no matter where they come from. Mm. So again, so their language is very important to, to be cultivated.
Mm. And again, one way to challenge the dominance of English within these international schools. Thank you. Kauri, did you want to come in with any other benefits?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Martina said. So often from where I'm coming from, international education sometimes considered as a little bit more like assimilation to one particular culture or English speaking culture. But by having or providing mother tongue languages, so like school can show that they recognize the value of diversity in languages, and also what really international education is, which is not only pushing English, but also embracing, like Martina said, other cultures and languages. And also I really agree what Susan said about so offering home language learning will help so a sort of emotional level for students. It's kind of like, you know, repeating what Martina said, though. Home language learning will help them to develop their linguistic identity, which is help them to identify who they are and where they belong, and also like giving them the capacity of to understand what their culture is, also giving their tool to express who they really are in their preferred language.
Ahmed?
Yeah, great. I will say after this great benefits, I would say like the teaching and learning in the mother language in international school can be benefits for the student in many ways, as they explained. Also, I want to add like being exposed to the other language culture from the very young ages. It gives the student the opportunity to learn as a second language or the third language or whatever it is as a native level. The need for the communication also as well encourages students to learn from the other and teach them at the same time, which will help them to learn. Also, as they mentioned about the culture, preserving the culture, also it being a benefit for teaching the language or the mother language in international schools, increasing language skills, like students who learn learn their native language in international schools as a second or first language, it develop or make it deeper understanding for the language achieve a higher level more than the people who have it at home or learning at home.
Thank you.
If I could just jump in with one more thought, listening to Kauri and Ahmed, is the need for international schools to consider how they're teaching host country language, both for the speakers of those languages, but also the students who might be there a few years, and how that language is viewed and how it's integrated into the curriculum.
And is there anything to say here also about the academic benefits of the maintaining and developing home languages? Would anyone like to pick up on that? We've spoken about identity development. We spoke about internationalism and cultural inclusion. How about the academics of school life?
Well, if I could jump in, like part of my study was, part of my questionnaire was asking students, it was over 200 students in international schools in Cyprus, about the knowledge of their native language. So, but usually when we are talking about knowledge of native language, it's just assumed that students know the language because they speak a language. Well, I divided the question. So I asked them to self-assess them in speaking, writing, and reading. So I asked students to self-report about their knowledge of their native language in these three areas. And while vast majority, over 80%, did find themselves fluent speakers of their native languages, these percentages were falling rapidly when it came to reading and then writing. So just because we can see students speaking in their native language, it does not mean that these other components of language learning don't have to be developed. The other thing, then I start looking into the results further, and I wanted to know what factors influence students, especially, those lower results in writing and reading. And I took under consideration two factors, one being age and the other one, the time they spent in international schools. And it became very clear that age really wasn't a major contributing factor, because what happened is no matter the age, the longer the students were in the international school, the lower they were self-reporting their reading and their writing skills in their native languages. So this is why teaching it is important, because it's not only speaking what they pick up at home. There is so much more to language than just verbal communication.
I think also when we welcome students' languages into a school, whether it be formally in the curriculum, in the English-speaking classroom, we're also then opening up all of their experiences, their literacy in the language, all the skills that they can transfer into their learning in English. If they happen to be from the host country, we're opening up the possibility for students who are new to the country to better understand where they're living. And we know that the stronger their understanding in their strongest language, the better their acquisition in other languages is going to take place. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, the literacy skills and the knowledge and understandings are transferable across the languages within their repertoire. Okay, shall we move on to the practicalities then? Like we mentioned earlier about the how, though, how based on your own schools or the schools you're familiar with, how can we organize home language instruction, mother language classes? How can we organize that in terms of systems and structures to ensure effective delivery of home language instruction?
I think organizationally, what often happens in schools is that the different language departments function independently and they're not held together. I think every school, every international school needs an expert in multilingualism. They need to be able to identify that. They can't assume that a language teacher is an expert in multilingualism. So having one expert that then can hold the different departments together, make the curricula talk to one another, works really well. And it's been, I know, Jake, your title currently has the word multilingual in it. We're starting to see that more and more schools giving people that title. I don't know whether anyone else here has someone on their staff with that title yet.
I would just add to it that part of it is that in looking at staffing of international schools and versus the student population, the idea, it seems like while students are very much multilingual, teachers and heads are monolingual, and I think there comes a little bit of a clash of misunderstanding it. So going in the direction you and Jake are presenting here, it's a very good idea.
Yeah, I do agree what Martina said. So for example, in my school, my teaching experience, so Japanese or any language, maybe Mohammed can speak about Arabic, but every language has different needs and characteristics. But if we taught in one school, then we have a leadership team who's necessarily understand what Japanese characteristics, but still have to make decision for us. So for me, someone like Jacob, who try to understand what are the needs of other languages or characteristics, and kind of language learning timelines are very different. I don't want to go to details, but for example, Japanese is categorized as one of the most difficult language for English speakers, and it requires 2,200 hours of learning time to be fluent. But on the contrast, if you learn French, it's going to be 600 hours. So if you learn Japanese for 2 years, and if you learn French, the development will be very different. And then what we have to do day-to-day learning will look different. So I would appreciate, and it's important that school has someone who's tried to reach out and understand other language characteristic and make a decision for us. That's very important at the structure of school.
So what we're talking about is sorry, Ahmed. What we're talking about is the leadership, right, of the home language programs, and we can't just be down to the individual home language teachers. It needs to be a whole school vision and a whole school approach that that has that kind of leadership. Ahmed, would you like to talk a little bit about how it's in your school?
Yeah, I totally agree about her talking, because the different language like English or Japanese or whatever is like, we face the same challenge in our department and our schools as Arabic language, as we need to deal with two type of learner, who's native and who's non-native. And if we talk about the native in Dubai, we can say like they are not native schools or native student. The first language here in Dubai, we can say it's an English, you know. So for the Arabic speaker who's native, we deal with them like they are not even Arabic, you know. So we're trying to, and also we have the framework from which provide from the Ministry of Education, and this stuff we have to work on it, and we have to make it more real life or linked to life, so it being easy for the student to learn, not only learning skills. I'm talking specific about the Arabic B who's not native. Yes, we have something we call the framework, or KHDA framework, which give us the lines and to work on it. But as a teacher, we're trying to work to make this kind of framework work with the student as a link to life, as a something it can be in using every single day, every single time, so it being easy for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so often, like Kauri and Ahmed said, I think leadership isn't knowledgeable about languages, or even the fact, for example, the great variety of Arabics you have, and the fact that the Arabic studied in school is a formal level. In my role as head of multilingualism, one of the biggest parts of my role was actually collaborating with the admissions department, because I met every single new family. Now, I happen to speak a number of different languages, and I happen to have lived in lots of places, so I had a good knowledge base, but I learned from conversations with parents. I learned from conversations with colleagues about, the makeup of even students coming from Kazakhstan at the time, the Kazakh and Russian sort of languages they already had in their repertoire. So the need to talk, I think on one hand it's useful to have language departments, but actually the way that I structured it in my school previously is we had a department of literature languages. So, and in English was included in that. English was next to the other 23 languages. And then we had a department of language acquisition, where English was also with the other language acquisition. So, because I think also, and that's a way of making sure that one language isn't more important than another, and a way for teachers to learn from one another too.
And that's, I think, so we're talking about the knowledge of the leadership and skilling everyone up into building that shared understanding across the whole school community. And we'll come to that a little bit later. We talk about various stakeholders. And just to go back to Ahmed's point about having a framework. And I think like you were saying, the flexibility within that framework to allow us to meet the needs of students, because as I said earlier, when talking about the terminology, the realities is so complex, and students coming from different places and have different connections to the language. So although we need those structures and frameworks, it needs to be flexible enough for us to meet the needs of those students. I'm interested in one area we haven't really explored explicitly. We've spoken about learning when the host language may be the same as the first language or the mother language or the home language of students. And I think a lot of schools are starting to do that and are delivering those kind of language programs. But how about when we have a small number of speakers of a language, or even just one or two students who speak their home language in a highly diverse kind of multilingual context? How can we help those students to maintain, where we may not have the teaching staff within the school, we may not have the access to the resources within the school for so many languages?
I think working with parents would be a great resource here. First of all, what I've noticed in the schools that I've worked, there are certain national groups of parents, that they tend to keep together. And quite often they were coming to the school asking, well, can they use the facility for afternoon native language classes? And it's beneficial two ways. First of all, parents help set up these classes. And secondly, the school is showing the parents the respect they have for their culture. So it's a win-win situation where the school also is not being left alone, because quite often parents will better know their native community in certain location. Maybe then also can think of, online classes, find somebody in the country of origin. So I think in that situations, parents really are the key.
Yeah. I think also I've seen very effective programs where you pair an older and a younger student. And that's lovely to see if you happen to have an older student who's also new to learning in English, and giving them a role of mentoring a younger student in the school. And all of a sudden they realize the linguistic power they have in that relationship. I used to do a lot of work, and I still do, around students presenting their language portraits or their linguistic repertoires, because very often also many teachers are not aware of what the students speak at home or who they use the language with, and absolutely, like Martina said, or we assume that they have literacy in a language and they don't. So actually having them just share with the class their full linguistic repertoire makes also students curious about one another. Sometimes all of a sudden they, without realizing, start comparing their languages, finding similarities, finding differences, making space for it.
So structurally, sorry to interrupt. I just the question of structures and go back to that to help people who may be watching and wondering, well, how can I do this in our timetable? How can we schedule these classes? Where can we put them? Does anyone have any advice or experience to share about that? Are all home language classes happening at the same time? Are students being removed from other subjects to access these courses? Does anyone want to share anything about that before we move on?
The school that I was in was highly dedicated to supporting home languages. So we had 23 languages happening all at the same time over the week, about 3.5 hours. But it had to be, to make it viable, because it was a relatively small school, the classes were grouped vertically. So we had 2 or 3 grades together. And at the same time, every day, everyone went into their language groups. That being said, there was a class, for one reason or another, where the students weren't doing their home language. And then that class became almost a linguistics class. So although we weren't teaching Albanian and Russian and Sisetu, we were, that's where that class where the students spoke about their languages, and we kind of had them share their languages in different ways. But it was part of the curriculum.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to share about that, or shall we move on to the next question?
I can just add 2 things. The first thing that I've noticed was afternoon classes. And then the other thing that we've seen are we have in Cyprus many very small but national schools, like Saturday schools. So we had many students going for those, whether they were Russian, Bulgarian, Arabic, and so on, going to those to these Saturday schools. I had Russian students basically completing their A-levels, finishing that, and then going to Russia to pass their secondary exams in Russia in Russian. So having students doing that, let's face it, they are brilliant for doing that, but it must be very, very difficult. So I think the part of this is, even if the school itself cannot provide students with native language classes, if they know of students doing things like that, going to those additional national Saturday schools or trying to pass exams in their home countries, it's important that the school encourages it and is being more supportive in those situations.
Yeah, I just want to add something for, as Suzanne and Martina said, that giving the time for the student or for who's new junior to the new joining to the school, like the Russian student, if we take an example, if we go through the curriculum and some of them have been joining us in the middle of the term or something, we have department called ELL, which we pull them outside of the class and start from the basics. So we give them time to build their language step by step, not from the middle of the term or something. Also, if you talk about Arabic as a second language, as we have students who join us later on, we design a curriculum which can support them inside and outside of the class. So we give them opportunity to learn the basics. And of course, each teacher have a differentiation in the class, but sometimes being difficult for the student to meet the expectation if he's joining later on, or if he's joining like grade 3 or grade 4. So we give them like time to learn about it, or to start with the department it's called ELL, or with the support outside of the class as well.
Yeah, I think what many schools do is they set up a school, they have a vision for what they want to do, but they never analyze their school population. Or sometimes they set up a school and over time, the school population changes and they still stuck with the same curriculum options. In general, schools are becoming, on one hand, more diverse, and on the other hand, attracting more host country students who will be there for long term. So I think a big question for schools is your curriculum offering still fit for your student population? And and in terms of priority, what should we be prioritizing? And I think we all agree here we should prioritize home language and the school language, and then initially, because that's what we know is going to help the student function in school, and then look at other, and then probably host country language, and then additional languages.
And once that priority is established, then as we can see, there are a number of ways that schools can find to deliver on that.
Yeah.
So let's think about, how can we get the home language out of the home language classroom? So we've talked a lot about setting the classes up and the structures and that, but how can we make the home languages more visible in the life of the school and play a part in the wider life of the school outside of those classrooms? Kauri, would you like to start on that one?
Sure. I think one of the things we can do is make translanguaging as a school culture, or the norm in like any subject classroom, so that students can use any language when they do research, brainstorming, or any activities can be bilingual, multilingual. I think it's important that any teacher encourage students to do it, and then kind of treat that as a norm, like let's use any language. Even though the medium of instruction is English, they probably have to produce in English, but in the process, we should be encouraging the translanguaging.
Yes. For this point, that as she mentioned, that I want to say that's a great idea, or a great part to work on, to make it visible around the schools or around outside of the class. Okay, for that, we're trying to make it like to teach the language through the drama. As you know, the drama is making like the student do their best to be in a part, or to be in the role play, or whatever you present them. That give them motivation and give them the challenge to work hard. Also to make it visible, as we celebrate the language day, Mother Language Day, as we have in Arabic, the Mother Language Day taking place at 18 December, I believe. Also the activity, it can be like more drama, more real life activity, competition, which will let the student be part of it and encourage them to be part of it, a competition inside the school or with other schools which should be aware of it.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to take part in a research project in the school where I was that taught 23 languages of the curriculum. So you think you've done it all, but this research project looked at the linguistic landscape of the school, or they call it schoolscape in research. So basically, what languages do you see in the school? And the researchers first came in and walked around the school and took lots of photos, and you could see languages here and there. But then what was fun was the students became co-researchers, and we gave primary school students a map of the school, and we said to them, label where you use your languages in school. Now, if you walked around that school, you would hear languages all over the place. The majority of students looked on the map for the classroom where they had their home language and labeled that Arabic, and then wrote English, English, English everywhere else. Now, that's not the reality. They use their language in class, they use their language in the playground. But when we saw that, we realized the children thought that that was what they should be doing. And that made us realize we needed to be more explicit in saying to the students, use your language. We want you to use your language. And the power of seeing it, is part of that. We also, we gave them an iPad then and said to them, walk around the school and take pictures of where you see language. And again, they all ran to their language classroom and took pictures there. So that really made us rethink how we were presenting languages around the school. So we then gave the children the opportunity to display something in any language anywhere in the school. And that was where it was powerful to see the students were advocating for each other. Oh, Ahmed, I didn't see any Arabic. Let's make an Arabic sign together. And they were looking after one another. Wonderful exercise.
That's a great sign. I have been done this activity with a student. I was teaching how to write the sign in the Arabic. So I was asking them, okay, let's write the sign around the school. So we will design it and we'll make it work, and we will put it different way. Like, don't run like, hey, stop here and this stuff. As you mentioned, also the signs that we used to write, like my name is Ahmed Al-Jindi in Arabic, in English, we used to write the Arabic down. So if we do have activities, so we ask the student, okay, we're learning about for the KG2 or grade 1. Okay, we're learning about the Arabic letter, let's say letter meme or whatever it is. So go around the school, go outside of the class and look which word you can find the same letters that we learn. The label, as you said, is the cafeteria, how to write it in Arabic in the same place, the library, whatever it is. Yep.
And that schoolscape project that you're talking about is something that we could all do in our schools as a way of gathering that, like we said, about do we really know the reality of our schools, what languages are being used, how they're being used. That would be a really interesting way of exploring that within our teams.
A funny little anecdote too. Even if you do then try and I later did projects with other students where we did multilingual signage around the school, but these were middle school students, and I said to them, do not use Google Translate. Make sure that you check it with a speaker of the language. But they went ahead and put all these signs up. It was wonderful. It was a sort of COVID sign, multilingual COVID signage project. And they put a sign up in the hallway in Japanese. We had a large Japanese community in school. And about a week later, I noticed a little piece of paper stuck over the sign where they'd gone and corrected it, because of course my students had Google translated and somebody in the community, luckily, had very quietly just gone and corrected it.
Thank you for sharing that. Just shows how the community can pull together and work collaboratively through these kind of projects. Martina, would you like to share anything on this one before we move on?
Just thinking about what Susan said, why other students thought that, well, they should put English in all our classes. I think it's also a balance, because if we know that predominantly parents want to send their children to learn the English language and then get international qualifications. So this also may influence how students think. If all other classes take place in English, and it's a difficult balance, because from one hand, yes, you want students and I think especially for school leaders, because from one hand, yes, we want to have this very much intercultural community that thrives of its diversity. From the other hand, I believe that school leaders have very clear objective in their mind. They know why parents are sending their children to their school. So also they have to make sure that the English language is being spoken, and it's being spoken at a level that allows the students to pass the exams at the highest level, because that's the goal. So I think there's some kind of it is that there has to be a balance between the two, understanding it from the perspective of interculturalism and diversity, and also from the perspective of school leadership and just this more globalist purpose of international schools, which make them such successful businesses. So this is also worth discussing by the leadership and with the leadership. Where is this golden middle that makes everything work together?
And that brings us nicely to the next question about the resistance that we may face from parents or other students, or from the leadership or other teachers when we're implementing home language classes or home language learning in our schools. How can we address some of those concerns that may be raised? How can we tackle some of those misconceptions and resistance from those different stakeholder groups?
Yeah, I'll
go ahead, Ahmed.
Go ahead, Suzanne, after you.
I'll repeat what I said earlier. Every school needs a language expert, a multilingualism expert, and you need a written language policy. And that expert is the gatekeeper of that policy. So many schools are misaligned. And what Martina was saying about what are international schools selling to parents? And if we're selling English, but our language policy says something different, then that means the admissions or the marketing department actually isn't aligned with the values of the schools. So getting something in writing, so important. Having that expert on the interview panel of every teacher, making sure that every teacher that starts working in that school is aligned with the language policy. Sorry, Ahmed, your turn.
I want to share about the misconception that we have, because as I'm talking about the language, as the Arabic language I'm teaching, we have a challenge or misconception as a Arabic A, or who's native and who's not native. For the native speaker, they feel like the language is not used, and we've been here in international culture or international school, so we're using English, which is enough. And this, so we used to talk to them like, yep, even if we have an international community or something, we still need the Arabic, as we have many Arabic country, maybe we go to, so we need to use this language as well. Also, we're trying to challenge them, like, yes, this still will take us the first questions that we have about the benefits of teaching the mother language. Yes, still that's our language, and we need to learn, and we need to keep it and save it for our kids or something. Even if in Dubai, it's not. There is a lot of places also still speaking in Arabic, not only English. You can see that Dubai is fully English. But if you go to Sharjah or Iraq or whatever it is, you'll find only the language we choose. It's only Arabic. So are we guaranteed that we're gonna stay in the place or area which speak in English only? Maybe we'll go home back. So we need the English. So this misconception, and also the misconception which we have with non-native speakers, like they feel it's a challenge for them. Like, yeah, we're gonna learn a new language with a new alphabet, with a new way of writing, way of speaking, not like Spanish, so you learning English is still the same alphabet or something. So we used to have a morning coffee with them in the morning to talk about how we can support them, how we can share with them some evidence, resources that it can help at home. We're not expecting you to help at home, but we need your support to give him the environment just to work on and this stuff.
Yeah, Ahmed, do you think that those misconceptions or attitudes towards Arabic come from the home?
Sorry?
Do you think that the attitudes that the students have towards Arabic maybe comes from the home or from their parents?
Actually, I want to say yes, but also I want to say that the student, let's say he has an Arabic like 1 hour, okay? After this 1 hour, he never practiced the language anymore as Arabic language. He's going to the playground, he's speaking English, homeroom, he's speaking English. At home, even his family is Arab, he's still speaking English, you know? So it's being like he's not using it. So what's the point of learning it if I'm not using it? If I'm using only with you.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to be on the same page as parents, because I think what they value is greatly influence what students values. And in my experience, like talking with Japanese parents who send a kid to our school and hoping then their child pick up English, and then that will open up future career opportunities. So they tend to not value learning home language. Then if I said, oh, that's going to be important, blah, 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 it's harder for them to hear what I said, or it's harder for them to see with the lens that teachers see. So as in my previous school, I was working as a parent liaison. And what I found very beneficial is connecting parents, having a parents community talk about how kids, integrating English culture, how they transform when they starting learning English, so that they can see the benefit, but also they see that they start losing the ability of communicating in Japanese or acting non-like Japanese. Of course, they will act like a bit more English speaker. Then when they turn like 18 or when they're graduating, like how being bilingual means to family, like a family relationship. So that those experience will kind of open up parents' eyes for someone like, parents of grade 1 and 2 who's believing, oh, it's going to be okay. My kids will speak Japanese, no problem. But what really going through, it's more complex. Then they start realizing the value of having sharing the language that they can fully understand each other and fully be able to express each other. Then they will start a bit more, on our side or on the same page.
I think
the part
what you said, sorry, Ahmed.
This part to Martiana go about it. It's the language is not only speaking it. Yeah, speaking it, you can learn it at home. It's still we're missing skills like writing, the difficult skills that we face in teaching language. So it's not only about speaking, as you mentioned. Like my kids are gonna learn Japanese or whatever it is. No, they need to be taken serious. So yes, we will give them opportunity at the school. Even we have to involve the community, which family at house, at home, which will help us to make more progress with these kids as across the whole skills, not only speaking or whatever it is. It should be across the school, across the skills as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how different parents treat it, isn't it? Some want their children to know as many languages as possible because they see it as benefit. others don't. So it's quite interesting. I have a very multilingual and multicultural family, and a 3-year-old who is now being pushed 3 languages at once at him, which I just, like, my idea is fingers crossed. I'm reading some research about it, but well, wait is the answer usually. But yes, I know of other families being multicultural, yet they choose to stick to one language, which is, for example, the family language being English, despite the fact that none of the parents is a native English speaker. So it's quite interesting. It's very individual decision also.
Yeah. But I do think, coming back to what I mentioned earlier, as schools, we should, from the moment a teacher applies to work in our school, from the moment a family visits our school, we need to make sure they understand what the school's priorities are, and so that they know what they're buying into, so that they don't get in there and then you have those discussions that are a little bit difficult. Sometimes parents, the misconceptions are just because they still have this view that languages are in competition with one another rather than working together. So it's often just about running, Kaori, what you did of having parent meetings, wonderful, because that's where you can shift parents' understanding of what is it to be bilingual and biliterate. And once they have that understanding, then your discussions kind of might sort themselves out.
I think where Kaori said it best earlier when she said get everyone on the same page, and trying to get the whole community on the same page and understanding this vision and understanding that it's not a question of either or, it's about both and we can develop students' English and the language of instruction, and we can also develop the home languages and include those in our international schools as well. So we're almost at the end of our time, but I thought maybe just for the last minute or so would go around and share any final thoughts, any kind of last things you'd like to say to leave with the people who are watching this, to any kind of final reflections.
I think a word I've not used yet this morning is bidirectional. So again, thinking of those languages, and for us to keep on remembering that transfer between languages, whether it be literacy, understanding of literacy, understanding of concepts, it goes both directions. And if we can harness that in our curriculum, in this way we've structured staffing, in the way we talk with parents, it's a good start.
Thank you, Susan. Kaori?
Yeah, like what Susan said, we try to set up some spiral learning model, like, using 2 languages in my school, Japanese and English, and then we recognize language learning as a transferable and to have teaching the same concept but in different languages, so that kids can develop both languages. I think that's a great model.
Thank you. Ahmed, would you like to share any final thoughts?
Not really, but as Suzanne said, and Martiana, that we have to deal with parents, and we have to show how like when they come to our school, we have to make sure what the priority for our school and how the challenge we have. So we make agreement with them, like, yeah, that's what we offering you, that's what we expecting you to support us in.
Thank you. Martina?
Yes, I would say, based on what everybody was saying, and I found very important what Susan said. There is no one size fits all. International schools are very individual, and even one school can change over time. So I think that the start is understand your population, understand your student population, understand your teacher population, understand your parent population, see where they are coming from, develop a policy based on that, and stick to it. But if it needs revising, revise it, because things are very dynamic. But it's important that we do everything that we allow our students in an international community to develop positive self-identity and allow for this diversity. There may be, as we spoke before, there may be parents who do not want that, but it does not mean that this choice should be taken away.
So once we make this a priority, then we can find the ways that work within our own context and that make sense for our own school communities. So thank you very much. It's been great to speak to you all and to learn from you all, and to just reaffirm the importance and start to think through some of these questions about how we can make this kind of this vision a reality in our international schools. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating and for sharing your ideas and experience. And I'd like to hand back over to Max.
Fantastic. I'd just quickly like to reiterate that, Jacob, fantastic job. And thank you everyone so much for joining. Some really, really interesting insights there. And I really like the practical side of things as well, to give listeners and viewers of this some real ideas to take away and think about implementing in their own school environments. So yeah, thank you once again. And maybe look forward to doing a part 2 sometime soon.